Got 49 days, produce a vehicle from nothing, and we have no money. Well, Probst turned around, and his first several reactions were, you guys are nuts.
Lured by the challenge, Probst accepted Bantam's offer. On Wednesday, July 17, 1940, Probst and the head of the Bantam team, Harold Christ, set to work. The effort continued around the clock for the next 5 weeks.
The only way I could describe what they were doing is I would call ruthless engineering. If they didn't have it on the shelf and they couldn't find it easily, they would send people out to forage and pick up whatever they had, bring it back into the shop and modify it. These guys were motivated and they were smart people.
Fenders were fabricated by hand. Hoods were dragged from junkyards. Other vital components were cannibalized from older Bantam vehicles.
So September 1st rolled around, and these guys are looking at each other with stuff all over the floor. The pieces aren't together, and they're just saying, we aren't going to be able to do it. It's impossible.
The deadline, 5 p.m., September 23rd, 1940. By the night of the 22nd, the team had accomplished all they could. They called their prototype the BRC, the Bantam Reconnaissance Car.
Next morning, they mounted up. They drove it at 25 miles an hour in a totally untested vehicle just to break the engine in.
With only half an hour to spare, the Bantam team delivered their new invention to Camp Holabird, the Army's testing ground in Maryland. No one had ever seen anything like it.
Boy, look at that. You know, this is state-of-the-art technology. And the first thing they did was they hopped in and just kind of preliminarily drove around, and everybody was like all excited about it.
The bigger question was, would it work? To find out, they put 6 additional prototypes through grueling tests.
They basically beat the living daylights out of the thing. They just went into the woods, they went up and down hills, they loaded it up, they put people in it, they tried everything that they could think of to see what this thing could do, and they were just totally flabbergasted because it did so much more than they expected it to do.
Equipped with 4-wheel drive, a new invention at the time, the BRC easily climbed and descended the steepest grades. The powerful engine, a Continental Y4112, gave the BRC the unprecedented ability to tow nearly half of its own weight. The Bantam design was simple, rugged, and an astounding success. One of the first officers to drive it predicted, "This unit will make history." Bantam's persistence had paid off.
This is part of the American character, the seat-of-the-pants ability to take a concept and deal with it and bring it to fruition. And other nations couldn't do that, and I think it's part of the American spirit. It's a can-do feeling, a can-do spirit.
Unfortunately for Bantam, turning in the winning car did not win them the prized production contract.
The Quartermaster Corps was saying, we have a war to win, and we're not worried about what's fair necessarily, but we need the biggest guy, the best guy to get this on time and delivered in a quality fashion, and therefore they went with the larger companies.
With the threat of imminent war, the Army gave the final production contracts to Bantam's original competitor, Willys Overland, and another automotive giant, the Ford Motor Company. Bantam was awarded a smaller contract, manufacturing trailers to be pulled behind the vehicle they had designed. The first 16,000 vehicles rolled off the Ford and Willys Overland assembly lines in November 1941. Manufacturers experimented with names for the vehicle, like Blitz Buggy, Peep, and Midget. But the Willys MB and Ford's GPW simply became known as the Jeep. Based on the original Bantam design, the Jeep was an engineering wonder.
What you're looking at now is a Willys MB Jeep. One of the things the Army wanted were pioneer tools, an axe and a shovel. Also down here, these are combat rims. If you had a flat tire, instead of using a tire machine, you would have to split these rims in half, put a tire in, and then bolt them back together, and that could be done in the field. Over here on the side of the body are some handles for manhandling feature that the government was looking for so GIs could move the vehicle around when it got stuck. Another interesting device that they came up with the Jeep was this manual hand crank. In case your starter didn't work, you weren't out of luck because you could just hook this into the front of the engine and then crank the vehicle to get it started. This is the blackout lighting system, where you can go anywhere from having regular lights as you do on an automobile to just some of the lights, to just the blackout lights, to an absolute blackout where no lights are on in the vehicle at all. This is a spare jerry can or gas can which carries 5 gallons of gasoline. The driver sat on top of 15 gallons of gas that you filled up in a gas tank like that. Inside, interestingly, are these nifty hand wipers that both the driver and the passenger had to operate depending on who had their hands free. You could just unhook the headlight, flip it up, and maneuver it so that you could work on the famous 4-cylinder, 134 cubic inch, 60 horsepower Go Devil engine. Then during the day, if you had a problem with aircraft, you were under an aircraft attack or something like that, you would basically put this cover on and tie it around, put the headlight back down so that no sunlight could glint off of the glass and tip aircraft off as to where your location was. This is the mechanical horse. This is what the Army was looking for to replace the horse, and it did a superb job. Just a fantastic vehicle.
But before the U.S. was able to deliver the new vehicle to European allies, everything suddenly changed. December 7th, 1941. Only 1 month after the first Jeeps rolled off the assembly line, the U.S. was finally, inextricably, at war. After more than 3 years of anticipation and dread, American soldiers and their new Jeeps would soon be deployed to war in staggering numbers. In Desert Storm, inflatable Humvees were used to deceive the enemy. Modern marvels will return in a moment. December 7th, 1941. The Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, brought every U.S. citizen to full attention. United States soil had been breached, and the country was now committed to an all-out war effort. On December 29th, the government sent the Ford Motor Company a contract to produce 63,000 Jeeps. To accomplish the feat, each of its 5 plants would have to turn out an average of 500 per week. Willys Overland Company was to produce thousands more. When the Jeeps arrived on the battlefields of Asia and Europe, soldiers quickly became dependent on them.
My God, we used it for everything. Each platoon had, the platoon leader had a Jeep. The theory was we were supposed to ride around and make contact with the infantry that we were supposed to support. It was a great step forward.
The Jeep's ingeniously simple design was one of its greatest assets. Because it was so adaptable, resourceful GIs and engineers immediately invented new uses for it. Some ideas were a little too far ahead of their time. When soldiers in Asia and Europe discovered that the Jeep was hampered by deep water, they improvised several techniques that enabled the Jeep to cross rivers and streams. None of them were very simple. The Ford Motor Company constructed a waterproof hull around the Jeep's exterior and called the experiment the General Purpose Amphibious Vehicle, or GPAV. But it proved ultimately unusable on the battlefield. While the GPAV swam like a sea lion, the additional 1,000 pounds of waterproofing materials slowed the vehicle to a crawl. Another little-known and equally curious Jeep innovation was called the Roto-Buggy. Equipping the Jeep with rotors and an aerodynamic tail, Army engineers designed the Roto-Buggy to fly itself to remote locations. But the flying Jeep never really made it off the ground. Jeep alterations made in the field were used